We are back on the, I don't know what you'd call it. It isn't not a podcast. It isn't the Rational Boomer podcast. It's somewhere in between. Now, I recorded the Rational Boomer podcast with Ed for tomorrow earlier today. And since that time, there have been some other things that have occurred. So I thought I'd give you, I don't know, an update, just a short update, maybe 15 minutes here. Maybe that's what I call it, the Rational Boomer update. That's absolutely creative and genius, isn't it? Anyway, I don't have a reason to have to record something, and I guess I don't have to name everything I fucking record. I mean, Jesus. Now, during the time I was talking to Ed, that was about the time they were voting on the Speaker of the House. And there was a lot of concern that Mike Johnson would not be reelected, and that could cause quite a mess for the Republicans, particularly Donald Trump specifically. So there was a lot of concern and a lot of drama around it. And much as we expected, the first vote came out and Mike Johnson did not get reelected. But they didn't close out that first vote, that first ballot. It came out 216 for Mike Johnson, 215 for Hakeem Jeffries, and three voted for other people. Now, for Hakeem Jeffries, every one of the Democratic representatives voted for Hakeem Jeffries. It was absolute unity. Republicans, a different story. 216 voted for Mike Johnson, three did not. And there was a representative named Tom Massie who just was not going to vote for him under any terms at all, no matter who talked to him, including Donald Trump. But there were two others. There was Keith Self and Ralph Norman. Now, these two voted against him, and they needed two votes for Mike Johnson to get to 218. So the vote was done, but they didn't gavel out. They didn't knock the hammer and call it over and then have to do another vote. They left it open. And then there was a lot of hustling around in the House chamber, people talking to everybody, people trying to cut deals, and it wasn't really going anywhere up until the time Mike Johnson, Norman, and Self went back into the cloakroom. That's what they call it. And apparently, when they came out, Norman and Self had agreed to vote for Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson was smiling, and a lot of people wondered what happened back there. What kind of deal did he cut? And it sounds like more than anything, what happened was there was a phone call from Donald Trump himself talking to Keith Self and Ralph Norman. I don't know what he promised him. I don't know what he threatened them with. But for whatever reason, those two have decided to vote for Mike Johnson. So they went up to the administrator, changed their vote. It was now 218 to 215 and one voting for other. That would be Thomas Massie. And he was reelected as Speaker of the House and technically in the first ballot. That was important for the Republicans. I mean, these people have trouble dealing with one another, and there's some question as to whether or not they can govern. And if you look at the past 2 years where they had control of the House, they do have problems governing. But they got this Mike Johnson elected, and things can start to proceed, like giving the oath of office, which they did to the new Congress. And there'll be plenty of other things before we even get to the 2025 inaugural, which is coming up on January 20th. So they slipped by there. But there was a message sent in this situation. The message was this: we need to elect you now so everything else isn't fucked up with the certification and the inaugural. But you better watch your P's and Q's. You better do what we tell you to do because you're a short distance from getting kicked out. And I would not be surprised that if 2 weeks, 2 months, 5 months after the inauguration and everybody's in control, that they do kick them out. Problem is, they don't really have anybody to replace them, nobody that can get 218 votes. Hell, Mike Johnson barely got it. And he was the only one that got it after the whole Kevin McCarthy debacle. So Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House for the moment. That's not too surprising. It was a little embarrassing for Donald Trump. It was a little embarrassing for the Republican Party, but they got through it pretty quickly. And people are wondering, is that a win for the Democrats? Is that a loss for the Democrats? It's really neither. It just exposed the Republicans for the incompetent fucks that they are. And the thing about it is, voting for a Speaker of the House is the easiest thing there is. It's when it comes down to the bills that they need to pass, that's going to be much harder. There is a big division in the Republican Party in the House, and they don't agree on shit. So they're going to have to count on the Democrats for some help in passing bills. But the Democrats aren't going to do that unless they give a little. And the Democrats aren't going to vote for some bullshit. So, as much as the Republicans think they have power in the House, they really don't. They may have a slim margin. That may be temporary if people resign or die or whatever the fuck happens. But for now, even with that slim margin, they can't really accomplish much. And that should make you feel better when it comes to tariffs and deportations and all that other bullshit. Donald Trump is going to be kept on a short leash. And once he's inaugurated, he becomes a liability to the Republican Party. There's nothing they can squeeze out of him anymore. And there's going to be a fair amount of pushback. There's no question about it. Well, Donald Trump may have been happy about what happened with Mike Johnson and the Speaker of the House, at least temporarily, because I don't even think Donald Trump likes Mike Johnson at this point, but he wanted everything to run smoothly for his certification and his inauguration. But if that made him smile, there was something else that pissed him off. You remember that trial he went through? You know, the trial where he was convicted of 34 felony charges in the Manhattan District for the hush money case. Yeah, we were waiting to see what was going to happen with that. Judge Juan Marchand was going to sentence him prior to the election. And then, for whatever reason, Judge Juan Marchand said, okay, we'll wait till after the election. And wait, we did. We waited for a while. And finally, he came out today and he said, look, we're going to do the sentencing on January 10th. That's about a week away. Now, Donald Trump had been trying very, very hard to get this thing dismissed or whatever he wanted to do. And Judge Juan Marchand wasn't going to allow that to happen. I mean, you have a bunch of time with jurors, you have the trial, you got 7 weeks on trial, and you can't just throw it away. The convictions are the convictions. Now, the question is, what is he going to do in the sentencing? Well, there's not a lot he can do given that Donald Trump will be the president of the United States. But this will ensure that this conviction is on the records permanently. There's nothing he can do to take that off. From what I gather, from what little we know, he's going to be sentenced. There isn't going to be any jail time. It wouldn't make any sense anyway because he's president and they aren't going to be able to put him in jail. There may be no penalties at all given by the judge in this sentencing. However, what they may do is it's suspended. The sentencing is suspended unless you get arrested again. And then it comes back and then you get punished for this. Now think about that. Would Donald Trump get sentenced if he committed another crime? Well, the fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, as far as what we know, he's committed other crimes. He hasn't been indicted for such. But more importantly than that, I want him to know in his mind that he was convicted, he was sentenced. There's no way of getting rid of it. He can't pardon himself. He can't do anything about that conviction. That will hang with him for the rest of his life. And to be perfectly honest, as he's going into this term as president, who knows how long he's got? He's not healthy mentally or physically. He's 78 years old. The Republicans are going to want to get rid of him one way or another. So I wouldn't put a lot of money on longevity when it comes to Donald Trump. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when he finally takes over. Now, he did say, it did come out by Bret Baier on Fox News. Bret Baier said that he'd heard from Donald Trump that when he takes office on that very first day, it's going to be like shock and awe. I'm going to do so many things. And for whatever reason, people buy into his bullshit. And I don't get it because he very rarely follows through. He always makes big claims. He's trying to intimidate or scare somebody, but it doesn't typically work. It just doesn't typically work that way. So um, theoretically, on the first day, the day he gets inaugurated, he's going to start the deportations, the tariffs, and all kinds of crazy things. But Donald Trump isn't much of a worker. He doesn't hustle much. He's more of a show pony. He likes to go golfing. He likes to rant from a stage and then let other people do shit. And what Donald Trump doesn't understand is that in spite of whatever he says, there are limitations to what he can accomplish. And there's a certain amount of that stuff that has to be okayed by Congress. And so far, it doesn't look like Congress is really going to bend over for him at every turn. I mean, in the Senate, Donald Trump wanted Rick Scott to be the majority leader. They said, fuck yourself, and made John Thune the majority leader. Donald Trump wanted Matt Gaetz as the attorney general, and Congress said, fuck yourself. The funding bill, he wanted to lift the limits on the debt ceiling, and Congress, the Republicans particularly, said, fuck yourself. This is what we're going to see a lot of when he takes office. He's maybe planning and expecting to put on a big show, but I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't think that that is likely to happen. Now, something I talked about with Old Soul yesterday, and I just want to reiterate it because I think it's important and it does illustrate something I've always said about Trumplafucks. They're stupid. I mean, they are just categorically fucking stupid. Old Soul told us about somebody she'd spoken to and how they were so excited about the prospect of the Republicans getting power in the House of Representatives. They hold the power to the purse strings. And Old Soul said to them, well, that's interesting, but they've had control in the House of Representatives for the last 2 years. And the person she was talking to looked at him and said, huh? Old Soul said, yeah, the Republicans were in control of the House of Representatives for the past 2 years. You know, that term where they did fucking jack. And these people couldn't believe it. They didn't know that. That was an absolute surprise to them. And I don't know how these people dress themselves in the morning. I mean, they are that fucking stupid. They think they've got a tiger by the tail now with this new session in the House of Representatives. And the fact of the matter is, they have less power than they did in the last term. They have a slimmer margin. And we can see how this is affecting things so far. And they just got checked in today. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these people think now that they've been given this revelation that you had this power all this time and you didn't do anything with it. Why are you so excited about them having the power now? But this is the essence of how stupid these people are. They don't know anything about policy. They don't know anything about governing. They only know about fighting and trying to own the libtards. Well, they've got a problem now because they're in control. They got exactly what they wanted. They are the dog that caught the bus because they have the power in the House, the power in the Senate, and the power in the Oval Office. Now, it's interesting. They keep talking about having a mandate. And it's natural that we would say, oh, you don't have a mandate because of this and because you only won by 1% in the presidential election. But James Carville, that pundit, that Democratic pundit from back in the Clinton days, he said something. He said, I don't think we should push back on that mandate claim. We should let them scream it. We got a mandate. We got all the power. Because when it comes down to it, they're going to fail miserably. They're going to not do well. So let them kick themselves in the balls by saying, we have a mandate. We have all the power. Because in fact, they do have all the power. And when things go to shit, they can't blame the Democrats. They're going to have to take all the heat themselves. And I think that's where our job comes in and why it's so important. every failure, every loss, every stupid comment, every ridiculous, embarrassing moment. We've got to rub it in their face, just like they attempted to do to Democrats during the last 4 years. This is what we have to do. Fuck, they don't even know who runs the House of Representatives. It's not going to be hard to rub their face into the dog shit that they will create. So it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to find out how many people in the Republican Party realize they have the power in the first place. Apparently, they're oblivious to that bullshit. So, anyway, I thought I'd take a quick moment or so and talk about some of the things that happened today. There are more things. And of course, the Rational Boomer podcast with Ed will show up tomorrow, early tomorrow morning, and we'll have more podcast as usual. And as I've said, if you want to listen to the Rational Boomer podcast, and for God's sake, I wish you would, go to Spotify, you get the audio version, and go to YouTube for the video version. Just look up Rational Boomer podcast and you will find it there. So I thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great rest of the night, and we'll be talking to you again shortly.